Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have a suggestion for a video, a question about this one, just some information you want to share about metalsmithing that might be relevant, those things are great. So I'm going to try something today I've been thinking about for a while. Oftentimes I try and use some kind of textile techniques in metalsmithing because you can use sheet the way you can use textiles, and wire you can weave and crochet and braid and all that kind of stuff. And I've been thinking about how you make kind of a ruffle on the edge of a piece of fabric, and the way you do it is you have one side of the fabric that's longer than the other, meaning that you cut it into a curved strip and then you straighten it out, and the outside edge is longer than the inside edge, and so that causes a ruffle. And I wanted to see if I could reproduce that in silver, and so I'm going to try to do that today, and I think it'll be a fun experiment. I picked out a stone. I thought I'd mount this pretty kind of rectangular cushion-shaped lavender amethyst with a checkerboard top. That's kind of a mouthful. But I think that'll be a pretty accent stone for this, and that is given if we can reproduce the effect I want. I want the ring band to look kind of like a noodle with the wavy sides on either side. So maybe a lasagna noodle, except skinnier. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I think they're marvelous, and I really do appreciate the great community that they've built over there. I enjoy interacting with them, and I hope that they're tapping into the knowledge of each other the way that I tap into their knowledge. They're a great group. Thanks for being that way. I do appreciate your support, more than you know. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 17,300, if I remember correctly, and that's amazing. I never ever thought I'd get to that stage, so I appreciate it. I particularly appreciate the really nice comments that people leave. I have a couple of commenters who add their considerable knowledge to my comment section, and I really do appreciate that because I certainly don't know everything. I've also gotten some really moving comments from people who've told me that they've really gotten something valuable from the channel. That makes it much easier to continue going when I'm tired or something. So thanks also for the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. That really helps with the finances. All right, well, let's get started on this experiment. This is one of my design idea books you can get on my merch store. This particular one has a conversion chart on the back. It has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I use all the time. It's a pretty useful chart. There's a few other ones as well that have different charts on the back, so you might check that out. I like these because it allows me to sketch up my designs in advance and kind of formulate my thoughts, and it also has this nice dot matrix in the back that makes it easier to draw things straight for me. Okay, so I don't have a complete picture of the ring really. This is sort of like it's going to be. But basically I want to take a piece of 18 gauge sheet, cut a curved piece like this, and then I want to dimple it on the top in symmetrical segments, and then try and flatten it out and try and get the wave to be a nice even wave. Now I did some experimenting over here, and this one's not very even, but I did achieve the kind of effect that I want, and you can see what I meant when I said lasagna noodle, because it'll be that way on one side and then it'll be that way on the other side, because I'm planning to make two of them and solder them back to back together like that. And then I have this pretty rectangular cushion cut checkerboard top lavender amethyst. It's about 8.5 by 10 millimeters. So I think I'll build a little prong setting and put him right on top of the ring there. I think that'll be a pretty ring. So we'll see. It'll be a fun experiment either way. So let's get started on this band here. I measured out a couple of curved pieces. Now, this is a little bit less steep curve than I used for the piece that I experimented with. And what I did was actually use the edge of my soldering pad here. I measured the length that I needed the inside edge to be to achieve the size that I want. I think I sized it at about a size 9 just to be safe. can always cut it shorter if I want to. And so I laid this on the silver, and I scribed a line in that at that curve. And you could probably use all different kinds of round things to do that, depending upon how much ruffling you want to get. But this is going to be both pieces. I have a space down the middle here, and I'm going to have to use my saw since it's an inside curve. So let's go over to the sawing area and let's saw that out, and then we'll start playing with the shape of it. Okay, so I'm going to get it started here in one of these little slots on my bench pin. Makes it easier to get the saw to start where you want it to start. This is a number, I think this is a 0. Okay, I'll clean these up a little bit and then we'll go do some shaping. Alright, I got those cleaned up a little bit so they're a little neater. They're not exactly the same, but that's alright. I can always file them once they're straight. I think what I want to do is I want to mark off kind of where I want these to go, the little indents. So this ended up being about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 66. So it's a little bit longer than I initially made, but that's alright. Alright, so right about there. Let's go about every 10 millimeters, and then that'll be the I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not sure, but I think maybe each of these will be bent out in one direction, and then in between each of them I'll bend them in the other direction. So let's see if we can do that a little bit. Actually, let's mark this one too while we're at it. So let's do this. Bend it this way. Okay, so now that I've gotten that sort of shaped, this one seems wider for some reason than the rest of them. That's okay. So in order to make this, since I just kind of work hardened it pretty badly, I'm going to anneal this, and then we'll start trying to straighten this edge by pounding it downwards. If you're new to this, annealing is where you soften the metal back up by heating it, and then you let it cool off and quench it when it's relatively cool again. And that randomizes the internal structure of the metal again. It gets hard the more you work it back and forth, or pound on it, or any kind of twisting or turning of it. So let that cool off for a minute. Okay, so I think let's start with a plastic hammer. We'll just do a little bit. I'm going to use my chasing hammer, the edge of it, to just try to flatten this bottom edge. I think it's symmetrical enough. Let's make sure that's all the way flat. And then I think I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes filing this a bit. Okay, so we got a relatively straight edge here on this side, and we got a wavy edge on that side. So now I need to make a second one to solder to that, and then we'll go from there. So I'll be right back after I make that second one. So I have these two pieces now. I kind of got these edges as straight as I could by squeezing them with my flat nose pliers and then tapping them a little bit with my chasing hammer. And I'm going to try and solder them together like this. If you've never been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a bottle. And my torch is a Silversmith model. It's their acetylene air torch, and I really like it. And so the other thing that people ask is what size tip do I use? This is a number 1. So let's see if we can do this. Let's cut a little bit of solder first. And if this works out, we'll make it into a ring band. It does look like a noodle, kind of. Kind of enjoy where I kind of find a shape or something that I wonder if I can reproduce in silver. This is one of those kind of times. Like a while back I was trying to figure out if I could make a torus shape, which is a kind of a donut shape, or a bagel shape. That's okay. Cool that off. Now it'll be interesting to see how much of that shape stays the way it is when we make it into a ring shape. So let's cut it off right as far as I can go. Then let's file the ends flat. I should have called this a bacon ring. It looks a little bit like bacon. Let's kind of bend it around here. Let's try it with, try doing a little bit of manual shaping with this. File these just a little bit this way. So I'm feeling like if there's any irregularities here, I can use an abrasive white wheel on my Dremel and kind of smooth that out so you can't even see the solder joint. So let's solder that and see how it goes. I do something called pick soldering a lot, which is where you pick up a little bit of solder on the end of a tungsten or a titanium pick. This one's titanium, I think. And you heat the piece up to the soldering temperature, and then you touch it where you want it to go, and it jumps on there. And if you're interested, I'll put a link up there. It's a really useful skill to learn. It's probably the most useful skill I learned when I was doing this. Okay, I'm going to spend a little time cleaning this up, and then we'll come back and make a setting for that stone. Be right back. Alright, so I've got it kind of cleaned up here. Just kind of smoothed out the solder joint. I used an abrasive white silicone wheel on my rotary tool. And we'll see, I may do a little bit of fine-tuning on the shapes here so they're a little more symmetrical, or I may leave them kind of abstract, who knows. I haven't decided yet. But either way, let's make a setting for this fellow. Alright, so to do this I need two kind of rounded rectangular rings One that's just about the size of the stone itself, so that if I set the stone on top of it, you will not see the ring. And so that's the first one I'm going to make. The second one is going to fit right inside of that ring pretty much. And we'll use that for the bottom ring, and then we'll create some prongs to hook them all together. That looks pretty close. I'm going to cut it just a little bit long, so I have a little room to play with. I don't think I have the proportions quite right here. Too narrow and too long. Starting to get in the right range now. Now let's do a second one that fits pretty close to inside of that. Okay, let's see. Can't solder these two closed. I don't need solder quite as big as that, so I'm going to cut a little bit smaller pieces. This is actually going to be under there, and I'll probably use a burr to kind of clean that out so it tapers downwards like that, so the stone sits a little bit down. This one's going to be further down, and they'll be attached by 4 prongs. So we have to figure out how to attach those prongs. And I think it would be a good idea to put kind of a little notch on each corner here. So I'm going to use a diamond bit and just do that. And then I'll be right back and we'll see if we can arrange to get these all soldered together into a prong setting. Okay, this is a magnesia block, which is kind of a soft surface that you can push things into. And I pushed 4 prongs down in there right at those little notches that I created on the outside edge. I also have some little notches kind of diagonally on the bottom corner of each of this. So once this is soldered together, we'll kind of pull it out and we'll shape it, and we'll get this one seated in there, and then we'll mount it on the ring. So we got some solder over here still, so let's see if we can't get these on here without melting anything too badly. If you're new to this, probably prong settings aren't kind of the first thing you want to try. Take a little practice. These kind of blocks are really useful, but they're kind of messy and crumbly. So I get asked a lot where to get them, and I usually get them off of Amazon. I've got that pretty much how I want it, so it's parallel. Of course, once I push it into the pad, it's going to move on me because Murphy's Law. These ones on the bottom I can cut off, I think. So I cut these a little bit shorter. I got these kind of straightened out, and I curved this on the bottom just a little bit to try and get it to match up here kind of nicer. Got kind of a bumpy surface, so let's do it right about there. I think I'm going to use some easy paste solder on this one, just to make it a little bit easier. In the old days, I would have just used hard solder and risked it. But okay, I'm going to let that pickle, and then we'll get it all ready to polish, and then we'll clean it up and set the stone. Be right back. Okay, so I've got this loosely held in there. I thinned out the insides of the prongs a little bit, down low there. And what I usually do is I just get them positioned, and then I gradually push them down a little bit until they're snug and the stone is sitting solidly. Now I'm going to cut them off a little bit shorter so that I can really lay that snugly over the top of the stone. This is not the final length. I'm going to leave them. They were starting to interfere with each other, so I'm going to kind of gently push these down. Okay. And then this is a checkerboard top, but normally there's a table facet, and I usually cut the prongs off about midway between the table facet and the girdle of the stone, which is the widest part. And so I'm going to have to kind of improvise here because it doesn't really have a table facet, but I don't want to leave too much prong up there. So I'll leave about, this gets harder and harder as I can't see as well as I used to. Someday I'll get some nice magnifiers. So I'll kind of eyeball these, and then if I'm way off or something, I'll trim it a little more on whichever one is. I may trim this one a little bit more, and then I'm going to use my my rotary tool with a white abrasive wheel and kind of taper these down very carefully, and then I'll use a fine abrasive wheel to smooth them out and get them shiny, and then I'll take some pictures. Okay, well that was the ruffled edge ring, or the ribbon ring. I'm not sure what we're going to call this one yet. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love it if you take a moment and go check out my main channel page. There's 430-ish videos there for your perusal, and I think you'll find that no matter what level you're at, there's something interesting to watch, whether it's just to get ideas for a project, or if you're new, to learn some new techniques, those kinds of things. So check it out. Subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the video description for some important links. There's a link to my ebook. The 2024 one was just released on January 1st. There's both PDF and EPUB versions. There's also a link to my Patreon if you want to check that out, and there's a link to my merch store if you want to get one of those nice design idea books that I use every time I do this now. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.